Take your seats. It's 2 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Karen. You're our protector of eel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the eel lady. Yeah. Slippery customer. So yes.
Follow our operations.
Please take your seats, folks. Please take your seats. I give the floor to the Secretariat, the Secretary General.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And welcome back to everybody from lunch for this nice surprise. It is time to celebrate excellent work. It is my pleasure to welcome the Europol Deputy Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Jean-Philippe Lecouf, sitting here to my left, who will receive the CITES Secretary General Certificate of Commendation on behalf of Europol. As you may know, the Certificate of Commendation is awarded to recognize exemplary actions related to enforcement. It is awarded to Europol in recognition of operational activities undertaken during the October 2022 to June 2023 edition of Operation Lake, a joint operation focusing on eel trafficking, coordinated by Europol and that involved law enforcement authorities from across the globe. The operation led to the arrest of 256 persons responsible for the trafficking of approximately 25 tons of live glass eels and marked a new record as the most successful yet in addressing international glass eel trafficking. Working closely with countries from both within and outside the European Union, Europol's activities included hosting a virtual command post, facilitating information exchange, providing analytical and forensic support to national law enforcement authorities, deploying experts to identify hotspots, to cross-check operational information in real time against Europol's databases, and providing leads to investigators in the field. Multiple countries and agencies contributed to the overall success of Operation Lake, and I trust that this award to Europol would also serve as a recognition of their efforts and as an inspiration to them. Mr. Lecouf, on behalf of the CITES Secretariat, congratulations, and please convey my congratulations also to Ms. Catherine de Boll, Executive Director of Europol. And a little something we like to give our special guests.
Yeah.
I invite you, Mr. Lecouf, to address the Standing Committee.
Dear members of the Standing Committee, so my name is Jean-Philippe Lecouf. I am the Europol's Deputy Executive Director for Operations. And I stand before you today profoundly grateful to accept this prestigious certificate from the Convention on International Trade and in Endangered Species for Europol's unwavering commitment and tireless effort to support the protection of glass seals. First and foremost, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the CITES for the recognition of this work, and also saying that your dedication to the preservation of our planet's fragile ecosystem is truly inspiring. And it is an absolute privilege to be acknowledged by such a distinguished organization. This award is not solely attributed to our team in Europol, but also to the collaboration and support that we have received from various stakeholders in the field of environment preservation. Our partners, countries and organizations, and to those who have tirelessly worked along us. So I extend to them. You said a few words about this Operation Lake, the last one. Just few figures. You said about this 256 arrests and 25 tons of eels that was seized for a value of approximating 13 million euro. But it's important also to underline that 20 tons of glass seals were prevented from being smuggled out of the EU and safely returned to the EU ecosystem, which is something we are proud. Every year, it's about 100 tons of glass seals that are trafficked, and it's about 2.5 billion euro, the amount of this. So this is why it's very interesting for organized crime to be part of this trafficking. And it is why also it meets our task and our mission as a law enforcement agency to fight against this. I wanted to raise one issue that is very important for us, is that there are not enough law enforcement agencies throughout the world that have specialized units dedicated to environmental crime. And I think it's really key. We have some good examples in Europe, with especially in Spain with Seprona from the Guardia Civil, in France with Oclaes from the Gendarmerie, or in Italy with the Carabinieri. But we need to have more of this unit. We want to thank Bulgaria and Croatia because they have created this unit in the EU, but also Serbia because they have decided to create one of these units. So if you can advocate for that, I think it's a powerful tool to enforce the laws and your convention throughout the world. And we need partners to do that, because Europol, we are a key actor, not only for Europe, but also wider, because it's more than 30 countries that were participating to this Operation Lake, and also other organizations. I want to quote Interpol, because they are in the room, I saw, but also our partner from OLAF, the anti-fraud organization from the EU, Eurojust, or the EU Commission. So it's very important. It's a very important recognition that you gave to us today. It's not only to us, it's to all of those who are contributing to this success. We will have another Operation Lake next year, because as you know, it's a seasonal crime issue, and we will try to be better And this is a strong push and a strong encouragement to do better next year, to preserve our environment and to give to our children a better world. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Two small housekeeping announcements. As you will have noticed, there was no interpretation for the first 15 minutes of this session. To save time on our interpretation, we have advised interpreters to only start interpreting at 2:15, which means that we can go on until 5:15 this afternoon. That was the first one. The second one, there are now online 3 com docs, as we call them, 3 in-session documents. The first was a proposal by India that was made on the first day. The second, edits to the compliance matter with regard to Bangladesh. And the third is the report from the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. So those 3 documents are online for your information. And I think that was it. Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're going to start the afternoon session, and I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce document SC 77, Doc 66, EELS.
Oh, no, sorry, I thought she said we were just going to start with that one. I'm sorry. My apologies. I didn't realize the chair was giving me the floor, so apologies, Chair. So Document SC77 Doc 66 was prepared by the Secretariat, and it provides an update on the implementation of decisions 19.218 to 19.221 on eels and anguilla species. The document refers to 2 notifications to the parties that were directed at range dates of anguillid eels. The first was issued in 2021, to which 27 responses were received, and the second was issued in 2023 in accordance with paragraph A of decision 19.212, and it invited range states of European eel transit and importing parties to submit any information sought in the 2021 notification that was not already provided, or any updates to the information that was previously submitted, but especially information on current levels of or emerging trades in specimens of anguilla species. Again, a total of 27 responses was received, and of these, 17 were updates from parties who had replied to the previous notification, and 10 were new respondents. So concerning paragraph B of decision 19.219, the Secretariat is in the process of collating and summarising all the responses to these 2 notifications on eels, and on the basis of these responses, the Secretariat will prepare draft recommendations on the conservation and management of European eel to be considered by an intersessional working group on eels that was established at the 32nd meeting of the Animals Committee, which will then report to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee. So the Standing Committee may also wish to consider establishing an intersessional working group on eels with the mandate to review the summary of the responses to the 2 eel notifications and any recommendations from the Secretariat and the Animals Committee, and make its own draft recommendations to improve the implementation of the Convention for European eel. And this could include the possibility of developing a specific resolution on European eel. And a possible terms of reference for such a working group are presented in paragraph 19. Concerning paragraph A of decision 19.221, the Secretariat provides an update on illegal trade in European eel in paragraphs 21 to 33, including an analysis of data on European eel seizures from 2016 to 2022 as reported by parties and recorded in the CITES illegal trade database, as well as highlighting the results of several enforcement efforts with a focus on European eel, including the interagency collaboration provided by Europol, the recipient of the Secretary-General's Certificate of Commendation just now. So in summary, the Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations outlined in paragraph 34. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. And I open the floor to members of the Standing Committee for their comments on this document. Poland, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We wish to thank the Secretariat for all work being done and welcome the document presented together with its recommendations. It needs to be highlighted that the illegal trade with European eel is of high concern for the EU and its member states. Given the urgency of the situation, the new intersessional working group of the Standing Committee should start working parallel with the Animals Committee working group. The intersessional working group of the Standing Committee should consider any recommendations agreed at the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee when providing its own recommendations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North America region supports noting the information regarding the ongoing work on eels conducted by the Animals Committee and efforts to tackle illegal trade in European eels. We support the recommendation to invite the Animals Committee's views on the possible development of a specific resolution on European eels, and we also believe that the discussions should consider whether it would be appropriate to develop a resolution covering all Anguilla species in the genus, recognizing the overlap and complexities in trade, both legal and illegal, in these species. As with the European region, we support the establishment of an intersessional working group in the Standing Committee on eels with the mandate outlined in paragraph 19 of document SC77, Doc 66. Noting the similar mandates of this proposed intersessional working group and the ongoing intersessional working group on eels in the Animals Committee, We stress the need to ensure that the work is well coordinated and not duplicated, and that the Standing Committee working group's discussions should focus on implementation and enforcement considerations, while the Animals Committee work considers scientific and technical issues. We recommend that the chairs of the two committees remain in contact to coordinate the efforts of their respective committees, and believe that much of the discussion in the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group should occur once the outputs and recommendations are received from the Animals Committee following its 33rd meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, the United States. I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We'll be brief. We support the recommendations in the document. Similar to the US, we would suggest expanding Recommendation B to seek the views of the Animals Committee on whether a species-specific or genus-wide resolution could be beneficial. We hope the additional information provided in response to the recent notification can be provided to both working groups if a Standing Committee working group is struck to inform their deliberations. And we support the US's suggestions regarding the separation of mandates and discussions within the working groups to be as efficient as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, the United Kingdom. I open the floor to observer parties. Morocco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. We take the floor as a range state. We would like to join those who have congratulated the Secretariat on the document on eels. As you know, we are a range state, and we have introduced sustainable use of this species, and we have all the attendant regulatory measures in place. We would like to work with other range states, and we support the Secretariat's proposal, particularly the idea of there being an intersessional working group. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Morocco. I open the floor for observer organizations. I give the floor to IUCN.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of IUCN and ZSL. We'd like to commend the ongoing efforts of all those involved in the enforcement of European eel trade. The increase in seizures highlights the scale of both this work and illegal activities. In relation to the recommendation to consider a resolution, we strongly support the suggestion of the North American region in the UK for a genus-level remit due to the complex interlinkages of legal and illegal fisheries and trade of multiple species, not just the listed European eel, that has been well documented in reports to CITES. Finally, we draw attention to the recent International Council for the Exploration of the Sea scientific advice relating to the European eel, which states there should be 0 catches in all habitats and all non-fisheries related anthropogenic mortalities should be 0. This, as well as the recent Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission American eel stock assessment, which indicates the US population has declined since 2017, highlights the ongoing need for robust.
Thank you, IUCN. Any other comments on this document? Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of support for the recommendations, and especially the establishment of an intersessional working group, with a little concern to make sure that they there was 2 proposals actually. One that they start working immediately, and then the other one was to make sure that they stay in close coordination with the Animals Committee. And so we can take up the intersessional working group in a second. So, but I heard support for recommendation 34A to note the information. Support to agree to recommendation B with recommendation B, and then for recommendation D, the committee agrees to encourage parties to actively engage in any operations and targeted activities to address illegal eels. So for A, B, and D, the committee agrees. And for recommendation C, there's support for an intersessional working group. So the committee will establish a intersessional working group with the mandate outlined in paragraph 19 to include review the Secretariat's summary on the responses to the notification to the parties 2021-18 and notifications to the parties 2023-62 on eels, including any updates provided under decision 19.218 and any recommendations from the Secretariat to improve the implementation of the Convention for European Eels. B, consider the recommendations of the Animals Committee and to seek the views of the Animals Committee on the benefits of a genus-level resolution for all ungulates. Consider the applicability of developing a specific resolution on European eels, and D, make draft recommendations to improve the implementation of the Convention for European Eels for consideration by the Standing Committee at its 78th meeting. The United Kingdom.
Sorry, we support the summary. I just wonder, in recommendation B, do we need to reflect the point about either a species-specific or a genus-level resolution for the Animals Committee to consider as well?
In recommendation B, I have the intersessional working group seeking the views of the Animals Committee on the benefits of a genus-level resolution. Do you want the Standing Committee to also?
Wait, are we talking about B or C? Sorry.
So would the committee like to also have the intersessional working group also weigh the benefits of the European eel resolution and an all eel resolution, as well as seek the views from the Animals Committee? That sounds like a good way forward. Okay. So I'm going to reread it one more time. And so this is the terms of reference, the mandate of the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group. Okay, so this is in paragraph 19. This will be the mandate. So A, as it stands in paragraph 19. B, to consider the recommendations of the Animals Committee and seek the Animals Committee's views on the benefits of a genus-level resolution. C, for the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group to consider the applicability of developing a specific resolution on European eels, as well as the benefits and drawbacks of a genus-level resolution. And D, to make draft recommendations to improve the implementation of the Convention for European Eels for consideration by the Standing Committee at the 78th meeting. That works? Okay. So the committee agrees to the recommendations as I just read out. I'm going to note all the comments that were made on the floor, and for membership in the intersessional working group, if you're interested in joining, please hit your to speak button so I can see your name on the list. So I have CMS, Australia, and I'll say, also as I read them out, please take your name off because we can only have 15 at a time. Okay, so I have CMS, Australia, Canada, Germany. Global Garden Trust, Portugal, Sweden, the United States, Switzerland, Zoological Society of London, IUCN, Indonesia, Republic of Korea, China, WWF, Dominican Republic, New Zealand, Poland, Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Japan. And I just want to make a correction to the mandate of the working group. So instead of in B, linking that to the Animals Committee, we're going to move that to C. So B will be just to consider the recommendations of the Animals Committee. And C will be consider the applicability of developing a species-specific resolution on European eels and on a resolution covering all angullids, and seek the views of the Animals Committee on the benefits and drawbacks of a genus-level resolution. Animals Committee Chair, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it would be better to have that recommendation for the Animals Committee to look at the benefits of a genus leveling listing in the recommendations of the Standing Committee under paragraph 34. There you would ask the Animals Committee to look at the issue, and then the intersessional working group would look at the results of these deliberation in the Animals Committee. So in the intersessional working group, you don't need to mention that from the Animals Committee because you will be looking at the recommendations of the Animals Committee anyway.
That's a great point. Okay. And so it would be in the recommendation B to have that addition.
Yes, under paragraph 34 of the document, under recommendation B, there you would ask the Animals Committee to also consider the value of a genus listing.
Instead of the intersessional working group seeking the views of the Animals Committee.
Resolution on the genus listing, yeah.
Okay, so the mandate of the working group is going to stay exactly as it is in paragraph 19. So we're going to leave the mandate of the working group the same. The working group is going to consider the recommendations of the Animals Committee, and we're going to invite the Animals Committee to also look at the benefits and drawbacks of all genus level resolution for all eels. Does anyone need me to do it again, read it again, or we have clarification and the Standing Committee agrees? Okay, with that, I close this agenda item. And note, Morocco, you would like to be in the intersessional working group? Yes. We do need a chair for the intersessional working group, and Indonesia, are you guys willing to chair this intersessional working group on eels? No. the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, perhaps we could ask the Secretariat to send a sort of an introductory email to the parties and observer organizations who sought to be part of this working group and seek a chair through that email rather than trying to do it here. Thank you.
Sounds like a wonderful idea, the United States. I will take you up on that. We will conclude this item. The Secretariat will follow up with the members of the working group to seek a chair. The next item on the agenda is item 40, marine turtles. And I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, at its 19th meeting, the Conference of the Parties adopted Decision 18.217 RevCop 19 on marine turtles. The decision is directed to the Standing Committee and directs the committee to review the study contained in document COP 18, INF 18, any additional information received by the Secretariat in response to notifications mentioned in the decision and recommendations of the Animals Committee in document SC 74 Doc 66.2. To support the Standing Committee in its implementation of the decision, the Secretariat consolidates in the present document information about relevant documents referred to in the decision and briefly recalls activities undertaken up to COP19 as relevant. For ease of reference, the responses to the notifications are presented in information document SC 77 INF 2 in the language and the format they were received. The Secretariat in the present document also provides observations for consideration by the Standing Committee in the implementation of its work. The recommendations prepared are presented in paragraph 11 of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the Secretariat. I open the floor to members of the Standing Committee for comments. I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region would like to express its appreciation of the Secretariat for Standing Committee 77 Doc 40 on marine turtles. As a region, we strongly support actions that would help address the illegal trade in marine turtles and ensure compliance with requirements under CITES for the conservation of these species. We support the Secretariat's recommendation to note the observations in paragraph 8 to 10 of the document, which state that scientific issues related to marine turtles and CITES have largely been incorporated into Resolution Comp 19.5 on the conservation and trade in marine turtles. We also support the Secretariat's recommendation that the Standing Committee establish an intersessional working group on marine turtles with a mandate to conduct the review anticipated in paragraph A of Decision 18.217 with a focus on compliance and enforcement aspects relevant to marine turtles. Finally, we also support a recommendation that the intersessional working group propose amendments to Resolution COP 19.5 to further strengthen it, but only if such amendments are deemed necessary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, the United States. I give the floor to Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan would like to express our thanks for the effort made by the Secretariat and the relevant state on this issue. As described in the past report, Japan has been effectively cracking down on illegal trade of hawksbill, known as Beko material, under the cooperation of relevant authorities, including customs. And we will continue to take appropriate measures against illegal international trade of sea turtles. In this regard, Japan would like to support the recommendation in the document 40, including the establishment of an intersessional working group on marine turtles. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. I give the floor to New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. Resolution 19.5 provides valuable direction on marine turtles, including some compliance and enforcement aspects. However, Oceania supports the establishment of an intersessional working group to see if amendments to Resolution 19.5 are required at COP20. Because many marine turtle range states, certainly from the Oceania region, are not present at this meeting, and it might save some time here too, we request that parties and observers are invited to signify their interest in joining the working group via a notification to the parties along similar lines to the way the Animals Committee Intersessional Working Group on Corals was established after AC 33. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia commends the Secretariat for the hard work and preparation of the document. Indonesia supports the recommendations as it also in line with our national law that put all marine turtle species in a protected status. Indonesia would also like to add more information to the meeting on Indonesia's commitments and efforts on marine turtles protection, both in regional and national levels. In our region, Indonesia has worked with 5 countries under the Coral Triangle Initiative for coral reefs, fisheries, and food security framework to implement the CTI-CFF Regional Plan of Action 2.0 for threatened species, which include marine turtles as one of the priorities. At the national level, Indonesia implements mitigation measures to reduce the risk of marine turtles being caught in fishing activities through the training of more than 600 fishing vessel captains and crews, imposing application of TED, turtle excluder device, on shrimp fisheries, as well as circle hooks in longline fisheries. We believe that our comprehensive strategy, together with the support of other countries, will contribute significantly to the protection of marine turtle in wildlife. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I give the floor to the Dominican Republic.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree with the Secretariat's observations in Paris 8 to 10, and we further endorse the recommendation that that we consider an intersessional working group on marine turtles as anticipated in paragraph A of decision 18217 Rev COP 19, with a particular focus on compliance and informant aspects relevant to marine turtles, and to propose amendments to Resolution Conf 19.5 to further strengthen it for consideration by the Standing Committee. What we wanted to add is the following. With respect to the protection of this species, we have just renewed a decree prohibiting their harvesting, and we have ongoing measures for trade monitoring in order to ensure that we do keep an eye on the situation. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. I'm going to open the floor for a few comments from observer parties. I give the floor to Benin.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Benin would like to thank the Secretariat for this document. We welcome its recommendations. Benin particularly supports the idea of establishing an intersessional working group given the threats that marine turtles face. We do need to fight marine species fraud, and we do try to monitor the situation, particularly with respect to reproduction. Were there to be an intersessional working group, we would be delighted to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Benin. I'm going to open the floor to observer organizations to take a few. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India recognizes the threat being faced by the marine turtles and their conservation requirements. India released a Marine Turtle Action Plan 2021-2026, which aims to conserve marine turtles and their habitat for maintaining a healthy marine ecosystem. Should the Standing Committee agree to establishing an intersessional working group on the marine turtles as recommended by the Secretariat in paragraph 11B of this document SC 77-40, India would be happy to be a member of the working group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, India. And so without seeing any interest from observer organizations and the fact that this document is to note and to establish an intersessional working group, we can conclude discussions on this, and looking to the Standing Committee to agree to note the observations of the Secretariat presented in paragraph 8 through 10 of the present document. There seems to be support for establishing an intersessional working group, so we will agree to the recommendation in paragraph B as stands. No edits to the mandate. And a new draft recommendation, we'll have a new recommendation C, which requests the Secretariat to issue notification to the parties to seek interest from parties and observers on participation in the working group. With that, I conclude this agenda item, and we move on to item 68, Queen Conch. I give it to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC 77, Doc 68 was prepared by the Secretariat and provides an update on the implementation of the decisions on Queen Conch adopted at COP19, including several projects that the Secretariat has been involved in recently concerning this species. These include working in conjunction with the joint CFMC, OSPESCA, WICA-FC, CRFM CITES working group on Queen Conch, and several exporting range states on the development of simplified guidance for making non-detriment findings for Queen Conch. And this is thanks to funding provided by the United States of America's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. This guidance will be presented as a case study at the upcoming NDF workshop next month. It also includes an update on the UNCTAD OECS CITES Blue Biotrade project on Queen Conch, and on a project on Queen Conch genetics to address illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. And this involves the University of Rhode Island and the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute. And thanks to financial support from the Netherlands, the Secretariat is funding a pilot phase of this genetic project. And range states have been invited to participate in this project through notification to the parties number 2023-123, which was published on the 2nd of November of this year. Concerning decision 19.236, at its 32nd meeting, the Animals Committee noted document AC32, Doc 39, and did not make any recommendations for consideration by the Standing Committee at this meeting. Concerning illegal trade in Queen Conch, the Secretariat presents an analysis of the data on Queen Conch seizures submitted by parties in the annual illegal trade reports from 2016 to 2020. So the Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraph 27, and as a precision, the Secretariat proposes the following minor amendment to recommendation C as follows. C, remind parties that, according to paragraph 3b, Roman numeral 4 of Resolution Conf 13.7, Rev Cop 17, on control of trade in personal and household effects, up to 3 specimens of Queen Conch shells, and we propose to insert the text as personal or household effects, are exempt from the requirement for a CITES permit, so as to include the text as personal or household effects. The rest remains the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will open the floor to members of the Standing Committee for their comments on this document. The United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region wishes to thank the Secretariat for preparing this document. We support the Standing Committee noting the reports produced pursuant to the Blue Biotrade project on Queen Conch, and are pleased to see the work advance under this project to assist Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines in assessing their Queen Conch fisheries. The North American region also supports the Standing Committee, reminding parties that Queen Conch data submitted for inclusion in CITES annual illegal trade reports should be by the number of shells, and meat should be reported in kilograms. Given the extent of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing of Queen Conch and concerns about illegal trade in this species, it's important to note that the quantities of shells and meat be consistently reported to allow more accurate trade monitoring. Finally, the North American region also supports the Standing Committee, reminding parties that up to 3 specimens of Queen Conch shells are exempt from the requirements of CITES permits in accordance with Resolution Comp 13.7, Rev Cop 17 under paragraph 3B4 with the changes offered by the Secretariat in paragraph 27C. Thank you.
Thank you, the United States. I give the floor to Honduras.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Madam. We agree with this document 68. And on 27C, we do agree that we need to specify that it's conch shells or whether it's the pearl. Often at customs you deal with conch shells, but sometimes it's the pearl rather than the shells, but we need to be clear as to what customs is supposed to be dealing with.
Thank you, Honduras. I open the floor to observer parties who wish to comment on the document 68. Also open the floor to observer organizations that wish to comment on the document. Okay, so Standing Committee, I didn't see any opposition for the recommendation, so that we agree to the recommendations in paragraph 27 as amended by the Secretariat. With that, and we will note the comments made on the floor. And with that, we move to the next agenda item, 62, West African vultures. And I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC 77 Doc 62 was prepared by the Secretariat and provides information relating to the implementation of decisions 19.192 to 19.196 on West African vultures. The Secretariat would like to highlight the following aspects contained in the document. A notification to the parties was issued to collect information on the implementation of decisions 19.192 and 19.193. The Secretariat received 4 responses that were shared with the AC32 and summarized in an information document to AC32. The Secretariat notes that poisoning seems to be the key concern and key priority to be addressed, according to these responses. A summary of the seizures involving the 7 species reported in annual illegal trade reports is contained in Annex 2 to the document. And based on this data, a total of 168 specimens were seized from 2017 to 2021. Only 3 of the 16 West African range states for the 7 vulture species referred to in Decision 19.192 submitted annual illegal trade reports, and none of these range states reported seizures involving specimens of these vulture species. The seizures reported by other parties included only 1 seizure that reported a West African range state as a source, namely Mali. The Secretariat notes that parties from West Africa that responded to the notification issued indicated that considerations regarding illegal trade in vultures have been integrated into the implementation of the West Africa strategy on combating wildlife crime. With regards to the production of identification materials focusing on parts and derivatives of vulture species for use by law enforcement officials, funds for the production of these identification materials have not been secured by the Secretariat. The Secretariat provided a summary of direct international trade data covering the period 2000 to 2022 for consideration by AC32 and noted that the number of trade transactions seems to have declined over time. The recommendations agreed by AC32 are contained in the summary record of the meeting and are included in paragraphs 15 to 17 of document SC 77 Doc 62. No recommendations were made by the Animals Committee for consideration by the Standing Committee. The Standing Committee is invited to consider the recommendations in paragraph 18 of the present document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I open the floor to members of the Standing Committee to provide comments on the document. I open the floor to observer parties to provide comments on the document. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Benin would like to extend thanks once again to the Secretariat for having prepared this document on vultures. We do feel that it's a matter of some urgency to act to protect this species. We also would agree with the recommendation to parties, particularly the West African range states, to include measures aimed at protecting this species. However, with respect to one of the recommendations, that is to say the link to demand reduction on when it comes to belief-based use, we would like to ask what that might mean to countries that are having to deal with issues that are really tied in with magic and religious belief. Thank you.
Thank you, Benin. I open the floor for observer organizations and give the floor to CMS.
Thank you, Chair. And CMS acknowledges the work going on in the CITES context and jointly with CMS through its multi-species action plan to conserve the African Eurasian vultures 2017-2029. This issue is, of course, on the agenda for CMS COP14 in a few months. Thank you.
Thank you, CMS. Okay, so not seeing any more requests for the floor. There seems to be support for the recommendations of the Secretariat. So the committee agrees to recommendation and the recommendations in paragraph 18, A and B, as outlined in document 62, and the Secretariat will take note on the comment made by Benin about demand reduction strategies concerning belief use and consider it as they do their work on demand reduction. With that, I close this agenda item and we move on to agenda item 64, great apes. I give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC 74, Doc 64 was prepared by the Secretariat in consultation with the Great Ape Survival Partnership, or GRASP, and the section on great apes of the SGA of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN Species Survival Commission, SSC, Primate Specialist Group. The document reports on the implementation of Resolution Conf 13.4 Rev COP 18 on conservation and trade in great apes. In paragraph 4 of the resolution, the Secretariat, the Standing Committee and the Animals Committee are urged to work closely with GRASP, the Great Ape Survival Partnership, which is an alliance of over 100 national governments, conservation organizations, research institutions, United Nations agencies and private companies, all committed to ensuring the long-term survival of great apes and their habitats in Africa and Asia. An update on GRASP and SGA activities in 2022 that are relevant to the implementation of the resolution is attached as Annex 1 to this document. Activities reported on include initiatives to conserve the habitat of great apes, information systems that facilitate the monitoring of changes in great ape population trends and in ape population status, threats, conservation activities, and research activities as well as regional conservation action plans. Annex 2 contains a summary of the seizures reported by parties in their illegal trade reports. The summary shows that there are very few reported records of seizures of great ape species. Only 2 seizures of significant quantity have been reported: 30 live specimens of chimpanzee from Guinea in 2017 and 17 live specimens recorded as pan-SPP from Turkey in 2020. Annex 3 contains an update on the status of and threats to great apes since the last report was made to CITES in 2018. In summary, the situation has not improved compared to 2018, and the key drivers and threats remain habitat loss, degradation, fragmentation, poaching, disease, and illegal trade. The CITES Secretariat is a member of the GRASP Executive Committee, and the last meeting of which was held in early October 2023, to prepare for the Council meeting, the GRASP Council meeting, which will be held from the 11th to the 15th of December at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris. The agenda of the Council meeting will include the results of a recent review of the GRASP partnership by an independent consultant, the development of a new work plan, as well as the possible inclusion of gibbons and the CMS Gorilla Agreement within the GRASP mandate. And the Secretariat will provide an update on the outcome of that Council meeting to SC78. In conclusion, the Standing Committee is invited to consider several recommendations that are presented in paragraph 17 of this document, and the Secretariat notes that all of these recommendations can be implemented through the ongoing collaboration between range states, conservation organisations, research institutions, United Nations agencies and private companies through the GRASP partnership. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the Secretariat. I open the floor now to members of the Standing Committee for comments on document 64 and the recommendations in paragraph 17. I give the floor to Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to thank the Secretariat and take note of its important report. We wish to support recommendations included and express deep concern about unstable and declining population status of great apes. We want also to underline the necessity for immediate actions to be taken by the parties, intergovernmental organizations, international aid agencies, NGOs, to implement adequate enforcement controls to address all aspects of illegal trade in great apes. Furthermore, we believe it would be beneficial to explore the possibilities focused on eradication of illegal trade in great ape specimens resulting from re-establishment of task force mentioned under document 42, providing it covers all great ape species. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. It is perhaps apparent that the lack of a report to the last COP, despite ResConf 13.4, that there is a need to reinvigorate the work required to be undertaken by parties to protect the great apes. And whilst we note the recommendations to the Standing Committee is invited to agree to in this document, the UK also notes the GRASP Council is meeting in Paris in December this year for the first time in 10 years. And we hope that this will also encourage renewed impetus in the protection of great apes. In the meantime, the UK urges range states to provide regular updates and reporting on the illegal killing of great apes and the illegal trade in parts and derivatives. Thank you.
Thank you, the UK. I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia supports the resolution 13.4 and would like to inform that Indonesia have implemented various policies and activities related to orangutan protection and against crime on orangutan in Indonesia. Under the mandate of Convention on Biological Diversity to mainstreaming biodiversity into policy sector, Indonesia declared Presidential Instruction Number 1 of 2023 concerning mainstreaming biodiversity in all sectors to ensure the sustainable development based on biodiversity conservation. Indonesia has also repatriated orangutans that have been smuggled from Thailand, Malaysia, Kuwait, and will be released into the wild habitat. Indonesia also have an intensive system monitoring, namely Smart Patrol, that obtain data on the finding of the existence of orangutan threat to the habitat and disturbance to orangutan, Indonesia also has strategic action plan on orangutan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I open the floor to observer parties. I open the floor to observer organizations and give the floor to CMS.
Thank you, Chair. And we thank the CITES Secretariat and GRASP for this comprehensive report. Great apes are included in the CMS CITES Joint Work Programme, with gorillas and chimpanzees being listed on CMS appendices. Hence, we'd like to briefly inform you of the upcoming meeting of the parties of the CMS Gorilla Agreement, which will for the first time take place jointly with the GRASP Council. The meeting is scheduled for 11 to 15 December this year in Paris, back-to-back with the GRASP Council. Thank you.
Thank you, CMS. I have a question for the United Kingdom. Is your recommendation for range states to report on the killing of great apes and seizures, parts and products covered by the recommendations in the document? Okay, so it's just, we will note that. With no other comments on this document, the committee agrees to the recommendations in paragraph 17. With that, I close this agenda item and we move on to document 42, illegal trade in African great apes. I give the floor to Liberia to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state of the critically endangered western chimpanzee, Liberia is very much concerned on the declining population of the chimps across the range and appreciate the opportunity to present this document. We are all aware that the great apes species are either critically endangered or endangered and included in Appendix 1 at CITES. While the species have been afforded with various degrees of protection ranging from national, regional, and international protections, poaching and illegal trade of African great apes continue to occur at an alarming rate and pose challenges to law enforcement and conservation efforts. CITES previously had a long history conserving great apes. It will be recorded that since 20 years, Resolution Conference 13.4 was adopted. Since it was adopted, the COP in Panama last year was the first COP that we never had the great ape as an agenda item. Despite a suggestion to do so by several African apes range states during the 74th Standing Committee meeting in Lyon, France, Liberia appreciates the information document, COP19 Info Document 85, submitted by the United States to address the shortcomings of the lack of great ape document at COP19 last year. While this brief history about CITES' effort is in great ape conservation in mind, Liberia is therefore proposing the following recommendations as outlined at Annex 1 and Annex 2. In Annex 1, Liberia is proposing to reestablish the CITES African Great Ape Task Force, and the task force will be an important mechanism to convene concerned stakeholders across the range states, transit and consumer states affected by the illegal trade in African great apes and other subject matters aspects. The proposed task force will discuss and identify current needs and gaps by reviewing the implementation of Resolution Count 13.4, Ref COP 18, and develop concrete strategies and recommendations accordingly. The task force will report its work no later than the 81 meetings of the Standing Committee. Additionally, Liberia is proposing several amendments at Annex 2 to update Resolution 13.4. Those proposed amendments will greatly assist the African range states to move effectively in tackling poaching and illegal trade by 1, developing national and regional action plans to reflect the conservation needs of the taxon, which will fall in line with the development of wild trafficking action plans or task forces that numerous African countries, such as ECOWAS member states, are currently undertaking. 2, development of projects that will fulfill conservation needs while enabling tangible benefits to indigenous people and local communities residing around protected areas, conservation areas, and other landscapes. 3, utilization of technology tools for the purpose of facilitating the law enforcement, tackling of confiscated great apes in illegal trade to determine their wild origins. 4, sustained support for accredited apes rescue and rehabilitation facilities, many of whom are constant partners of law enforcement on confiscation of live apes. In concluding, African great apes are our closest relative in the animal kingdom, and their ecological importance with the potential to combat climate change compel us to do much more. African great apes are considered umbrella species, and therefore efforts to protect them yield protection of other species who share the same habitats. I urge support for the document and to re-energize CITES' long-standing efforts to protect African great apes. Lastly, I would be happy to prepare draft term of reference and modus operandi for the task force for presentation to COP20.
Liberia?
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm going to turn to get comments from the members of the Standing Committee on the recommendations in Document 27, as well as the Document 42. I will just flag that there was a comment that was noted from the last agenda item from the gentleman from Poland for support for the task force, and so I will carry that over to this agenda item. And taking comments now. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Kenya is not a range state of the Great Apes, but we have a rescue and a rehabilitation center for chimpanzees for those great apes that are on illegal trade, which is very successful in Kenya. We therefore very much appreciate this document submitted by Liberia, and we do share the concerns documented in this document as our law enforcement officers continue to tackle poaching and confiscate live apes that are on international trade. We support the recommendations in Annex 1 and 2, in particular the recommendation for a task force in draft decision in Annex 1 is needed to step up, convene the CITES parties and observers affected by the illegal trade in African great apes in order to identify gaps and needs to tackle this complex conservation challenge. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. And so I'm going to just ask for folks I need to get a feel for whether or not there is support for the draft decisions and the amendments to the resolution. So I appreciate additional information, but if we can hone in on that just so I can see how we want this, the committee wants this to go. So I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm speaking on behalf of the North American region. We thank Liberia for submitting this document. With regard to the recommendation to reestablish the CITES African Great Apes Task Force, we would like more details on the goals of the task force and the ongoing work of GRASP and relevant NGOs to avoid duplication of efforts and reduce costs. If the task force is reestablished and the work specified in draft decision 20.2 Point AA, we suggest changing the reporting requirements in draft decision 20AA small c to Standing Committee 82, or simply changing it to Standing Committee without specifying a particular meeting. We support the proposed changes to Resolution Conf 13.4 Rev Cop 18 with a number of amendments. In the interest of time, rather than reviewing our proposed amendments and the rationale behind them, we recommend that the Secretariat issue a notification to the parties to solicit comments and reactions on the amendments to Resolution 13.4 proposed by Liberia for consideration at Standing Committee 78. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, the United States. I give the floor to Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We wish to thank Liberia for the document and efforts made to find possible solutions to properly address the ongoing issue of illegal trade in and poaching of African great apes. We express deep concern about unstable and declining population status of all great apes and stress the need for a balanced approach, recognizing existing problems and using tools in line with CITES framework. It should be stressed, however, that solutions to be considered under Doc 42 and 64 cover all great apes species, not only African great apes. Providing the scope for considered actions cover all great apes, we support set of decision in Annex 1, noting, however, that part of decision 20.cc seems to be a repetition of reporting obligations already included in the resolution Conf 13.4, and in that context, it seems to be redundant. As for proposed changes to resolution Conf 13.4, as presented in the Annex 2, whilst we do not object the idea for updating this resolution with regard to current challenges, we believe that proposed wording with any potential revisions require careful consideration prior to be supported, because it would have a long-lasting effect. So giving limited time to discuss it right now and being convinced that the changes to this resolution will benefit from further elaborations, we think the Secretariat may, as US already suggested, send a notification to parties interested to send their comments on changes to this resolution to Liberia and invite Liberia to table the revised text of those changes at SC 78. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I give the floor to the United Kingdom. I also open the floor to observer parties.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Whilst in principle the UK could support this proposal as a means for reviewing and promoting the implementation of ResComp 13.4, some of the activities of the new activities and proposed amendments of the resolution address important topics for great ape conservation, we believe that its remit would need to be tightly drawn to avoid overlap and duplication with many of the other great ape initiatives, much as my colleagues from the US and the EU have just said. We consider that the focus of the task force should be on addressing enforcement controls and implementation challenges and identifying opportunities to address illegal trade in great apes regionally, much like the Big Cat Task Force, rather than habitat protection, restoration, or national action plans. Thank you.
Thank you, the United Kingdom. I give the floor to Benin.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We will also be brief. We are not a range state for great apes, but we would like to thank Liberia for this work. And we'd also like to wish for the setting up again of the task force. And we support the recommendations as set out in Annexes 1 and 2. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor for observer organizations and give the floor to the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My country is the habitat for the 4 great ape species of Africa, and we are very concerned by the information that were contained in document and the seizures of living species that were mentioned, but it didn't say the country of origin. We're also concerned by the pan species. We don't know if they are Pan paniscus or Troglodytes. In document 42, which we are currently looking at, We support the draft recommendations in there, but I have a concern about paragraph 21, which mentions 3 baby chimpanzees rescued from that were stolen from a sanctuary. And I'd just like to say that the inquiry is underway, and until now we haven't got clear information on those involved.
Republic of the Congo, I give the floor to the representative from China for a brief intervention, and then I'm going to do a summary and a proposed way forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China notes this document with concern. Paragraph 23 mentions alleged illegal trade in chimpanzees between South Africa and China, and cites this alleged illegal trade under the subtitle of illegal trade in African great apes. China opposes such fair accusation without supporting evidence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China. And I give the floor briefly to Opis Oceani Foundation.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. This intervention is made on behalf of Sorry, I apologize. This intervention is made on behalf of Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance and 9 other observer organizations. We appreciate Liberia's leadership in raising the ongoing concern about the alarming illegal trade in African great apes and documenting the previous CITES efforts to tackle this conservation challenge. As of September this year, in one range state alone, the Democratic Republic of Congo, at least 27 chimpanzees and bonobos have been confiscated from the illegal trade. It is highly likely that several dozen animals within the family groups of these confiscated individuals will have died by poaching during their procurements. Primate sanctuaries across Africa are reliable partners for law enforcement in receiving confiscated animals, but many are at maximum capacity due to the continuing influx of rescue apes and other animals. Against the backdrops of these harsh frontline realities, we support the recommendations in this document, including the establishment of the task force. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, PASA and the other organizations. And so I'm not going to take any more comments right now and just focus on the Standing Committee. And so I have sort of a proposed way forward. I heard support for the draft decisions and the draft amendments from some of the, at least one of the committee members. I also heard a little trepidation about how is it going to work. Maybe it's premature or too soon, or they have questions about it. And so my proposed way forward is sort of similar to what was proposed by Poland and the United States, is to invite the Secretary to issue a notification to the parties seeking input and comments on the draft decisions in Annex 1 and the draft amendments in Annex 2, Resolution Comp 14.4, and provide those comments to Liberia, and then also invite Liberia to submit a proposal to the COP after review of the comments. Is that an acceptable way forward? Okay, great. So just to repeat, invite the Secretary to issue a notification to the parties on behalf of Liberia to seek input and comments on the draft decisions in Annex 1 and the draft amendments to Resolution Comp 14.3 in SC 77 Doc 42, and provide those comments to Liberia, and invite Liberia to submit a proposal to COP 20. My apologies. It's Resolution 13.4, not 13.4. The United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarification for these changes to be presented at SC 78. No? Or COP 20, I'm sorry.
Yeah, does the committee want Liberia to submit another document? I mean, you can invite them to submit another document to SC 78 after they received all your comments, or you can invite them to submit a document to COP 20. Or we can just collect the comments and provide them to Liberia? I open the floor to committee members. And Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Apologies, Chair. I know I'm not a committee member, but just reacting to your last piece of guidance, I'm really very mindful of time and how busy the agenda of SC 78 is likely also to be. And so it would be Canada's preference to be able to submit our comments and our reactions to Liberia so that we can have this discussion at the conference of the party where the ultimate decision should be taken in any case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. So my original proposal to the committee, is that an acceptable way forward? And we can agree to that? Thank you. So the committee agrees to the recommendations in 27. A, they note the information in the document, and B, invite the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties on behalf of Liberia seeking input and comments on draft decisions in Annex 1 and draft amendments to Resolution Comp 13.4 and Annex 2, and provide those comments to Liberia, and invite Liberia to submit a proposal to COP 20. With that, I conclude this agenda item, and we move to the next one, which is 45 rhinoceroses, and I provide the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, in Decision 19.122, the Conference of the Parties directs the Secretariat to examine the implementation of Resolution 9.14, RevCop 19, and Decisions 19.117 to 19.119, and to report on this at the present meeting. To facilitate its reporting to SC 77, the Secretariat wrote to the parties identified in document COP 19, Doc 75 Rev 1, as most affected by illegal trade in rhino horn, and to whom COP 19 directed specific decisions. These parties were requested to submit to the Secretariat a report on their implementation of the resolution and decisions on rhinoceroses as relevant to them. The responses received by the Secretariat from these parties are compiled in the annex to the present document, and they are summarized in paragraph 7 to 39 of the document. The Secretariat reports in the present document that no replies to its letter were received from Malaysia, Mozambique, and Vietnam, but that Mozambique did provide relevant information in its report on implementation of its National Ivory and Rhinoceros Action Plan, or NIRAP, submitted in accordance with Agenda Item 34. Matters related to Malaysia, Mozambique, and Vietnam are addressed in paragraphs 40 to 46 of the present document, and the Secretariat provides its observations and conclusions in paragraphs 47 to 59 of the present document. Now, in this regard, the Secretariat notes that Vietnam on 3 November submitted a report to the Secretariat, and this report is now available in document SC 77, INF 29. Further, Malaysia on 8 November submitted its report, which was made available as document SC 77, INF 33. Regarding emerging issues of concern, the Secretariat addresses matters related to Angola and Namibia in paragraph 60 to 62 of the present document. The document also addresses other matters, such as the 2023 Chitwan Declaration for Asian Rhino Conservation and the Directory of Illegal Trade on Rhino horn focal points. Regarding the CITES Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force meeting to be convened, the Secretariat is pleased to inform parties that since the preparation of the present document, additional funding has been secured to convene the task force, and the Secretariat will work to do so as soon as possible. The recommendations prepared for consideration by the committee are presented in paragraph 70 of the present document, but considering the reports from Malaysia and Vietnam, changes to these recommendations are needed. And Chair, with your permission, I'll provide some alternative text that are suggested.
Please, thank you.
So in terms of revised recommendations, recommendation A in the document will remain unchanged. Recommendation B remain unchanged. Recommendation C remain unchanged. Recommendation D is deleted in totality. The current recommendation E then becomes recommendation D. And then there's a new recommendation E, which I will read, and it reads as follows. Note that Vietnam submitted a report to the Secretariat on 3 November 2023, which is available as document SC77 INF 29, and that Malaysia submitted a report to the Secretariat on 8 November 2023, which is available as document SC77 INF 33, and request the two parties to take any comments and observations from the Secretariat in accordance with recommendation F, Roman I, into consideration in their implementation of decisions 19.118 and 19.119 as applicable to them. And then recommendation F, currently in the document, will get revised as follows. Request the Secretariat to, small Roman I, 1, review the report from Malaysia and Vietnam, available in document SC77, INF 29, and INF 33, and provide its comments and observations to these parties. Then small Roman 2 is the text that was originally in this recommendation. Seek information from the parties concerned by recommendations C to E on activities conducted and measures implemented in accordance with these recommendations, and then Roman 3, report to the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee on the results of activities conducted in accordance with recommendation F, small Roman 1 and small Roman 2, together with any recommendations the Secretariat may have. And then recommendation G, as currently in the document, remains unchanged. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I open the floor to comments from Standing Committee members. I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the North America region, we support adoption of the recommendations, including the amendments to those recommendations just read out by the Secretariat. Additionally, we would like to share that on behalf of the United States, that we are pleased to be able to provide funding toward the convening of the Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force through our U.S. Department of State contributions to the Secretariat Trust Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, the United States, and your support for the task force. I give the floor to Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We also like to wish to express our support to recommendations presented and urge parties affected by illegal rhino horn trade to increase efforts in implementing measures reducing poaching, illicit trade and demand for rhino horns. At the same time, we regret lack of, or especially right now, limited reporting from certain parties seriously affected by illegal rhino horn trade. We strongly encourage them to provide the Secretariat with the written information, which can enable proper assessment of the efforts made and support needed, and to do so within 60 days from this meeting, if necessary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I open the floor to observer parties. I give the floor to China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paragraph 48 of this document incorrectly assumed that no cooperation was carried out between South Africa and China, despite the fact that South Africa has made it clear that such cooperation is indeed occurring. The reasoning in paragraph 48 is flawed and should be avoided. Hereby, China presents updates on this issue. In fact, Chinese customs attach great importance to the conservation of rhinoceros and actively cooperates and collaborates very closely with the law enforcement agencies of African countries, including South Africa, to carry out intelligence exchange and conduct investigations. In accordance with the resolutions of the CITES, China and South Africa cooperate on DNA tracing on seized rhino horns, thereby exchanging intelligence and supporting the activities necessary to coordinate cross-border anti-smuggling cooperation. Under the joint and effective action of law enforcement agencies in China and Africa, cases of illegal trade have shown a promising decline in recent years. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, China. I'm going to open the floor to observer organizations. And I am going to close the list. I give the floor to Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana acknowledges documents SC 7745 submitted by the Secretariat. We are fully committed to the implementation of Decision 19.117, as shown by the measures that we have put in place to address the illegal killing of rhinos and the illegal trade of rhino specimen. We are pleased to note recommendation C, and we are fully committed to implement the same recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Botswana. I give the floor to Vietnam.
Madam Chair, Vietnam would like to reiterate our intervention on document 34 on the excuse of the late submission of the report, and we extend our apology for that. The report is now presented as information document 29, and by the report, Vietnam provides updates on various range of actions in legislation, legal framework consolidation, enforcement, demand reductions, and international cooperation. The report highlights the success of the groundbreaking transnational enforcement campaign titled Operation Mekong Dragon, initiated by Vietnam and China Custom. Operation Thunder by multiple countries' custom, facilitated by WCO and Interpol. The report also includes a database of seizures and court cases with criminal and administrative penalties. Vietnam hereby commends the collective efforts by a wide range of international organizations and NGOs that work relentlessly in rhinoceros matters in the country during the past years. In light of that, we would like to ally ourselves with the amendments made by the Secretariat to the paragraph 70. We thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vietnam. I give the floor to Namibia.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Namibia welcomes and appreciates this report by the Secretariat. We have taken note of emerging issues of concern related to Namibia, contained specifically in paragraph 61 and paragraph 62 of SC 77, Doc 45. We are happy to inform this meeting that we have already put new and improved measures in place after the 2022 rhino poaching surge. Amongst others, we are now implementing the revised management and conservation plans for black and white rhinos. We have recently developed security plans for specific national parks and conservation areas with rhino populations, and also our national strategy on wildlife protection and law enforcement has been revised. Consequently, the figure of rhinos poached thus far in 2020.
Can you give the floor back to Namibia, please? Thank you.
Consequently, the figure of rhinos poached thus far in 2023 is less than half of the 2022 figure. With those few words, Madam Chair, Namibia is in agreement with the recommendations contained in paragraph 70 of SC 77, Doc 45, as amended orally by the Secretariat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Namibia. I give the floor to Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, as a rhino range state, Kenya has taken many initiatives to prevent rhino poaching and rhino horn trafficking. Madam Chair, this has borne fruit, and in 2021, we recorded 0 rhino poaching in the country. And we continue to record lower levels of poaching. However, parties that are affected by rhino poaching and illegal trade cannot expect to effectively prevent these crimes if we all work alone. Collaboration is critical, which is why we urgently need to acquire the remaining funding to implement Decision 19.120 and convene a meeting of the CITES Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force. The CITES Rhinoceros Enforcement Task Force will bring together law enforcement officials from all parties affected by the illegal rhino horn trade to develop new strategies and partnership to respond to the current obstacles preventing effective international collaboration on rhino horn trafficking enforcement. Madam Chair, we therefore support the recommendations of the Secretariat as amended and that is contained in document 45. I thank you.
Thank you, Kenya. I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Malaysia's report to the document Agenda 45 can be found as an interim report in the information document number 33 as mentioned by the Secretariat. Malaysia has taken significant initiatives to increase the effectiveness of our enforcement targeting illegal trafficking of rhinoceros specimens, among others by developing our national risk profile and indicator to enhance detection of illegal wildlife trade coming to Malaysia, deployment of K9 unit in the international airports, seaports, and border gate to detect and prevent wildlife trafficking activities at the entry points. We have laid out our efforts in tackling this issue in the report and hope that our report can be assessed and welcome comment and observation on our initiatives in curbing these illegal activities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malaysia. I give the floor to Conservation Force for a brief intervention.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we would like to commend the range states for the excellent results in rhino conservation, which is recently also highlighted by IUCN has led to a 5% increase of rhino population in Africa in the last year. In particular, Madam Chair, we would like to commend Mozambique, but all the range states in Southern Africa and in Africa in general for the establishment of new community conservation areas. This, Madam Chair, is linked with document 28 that we will see on the engagement of IPLC and the crucial role of local communities in wildlife conservation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Conservation Force. And so back to the Standing Committee, I see an overwhelming support for the recommendations as revised by the Secretariat. Okay, so the Standing Committee agrees to the recommendations in document 45, paragraph 70, as revised by the Secretariat. With that, I close this agenda item and we move on to so I beg the indulgence of the room and in the efforts of time and to deal with some of the items that need maybe more discussion, I propose we park for now agenda item 38 and agenda item 30 and move to the suite of documents under the review for significant trade. Is that okay with the committee? Okay, so we will start now with agenda item 35, review of the significant trade. And I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC77, Doc 35.1, was produced by the Secretariat and provides an overview on the status of the Review Significant Trade, or RST, process. A revised version, Rev 1, was published on 19th of October 2023 as the species country combination Chelonoidis denticulatus from Suriname had been omitted in error, and so the total number of cases was consequently adjusted. So that means we have 119 cases in total, and details of these cases that are currently in the RST are presented in a table in the annex to this document. Of these cases, 80 relate to fauna and 39 relate to flora. And this includes the 21 species country combinations that were selected for inclusion in Stage 2 of RST by the Animals Committee at its 32nd meeting, and the 20 species country combinations that were selected by the Plants Committee at its 26th meeting. And these are found in paragraphs 7 and 8 respectively. The document also provides an update on the implementation of decisions 17.108 Rev Cop 19 to 17.110 Rev Cop 19. Concerning decision 17.109 Rev Cop 19, the Review of Significant Trade Tracking and Management System was launched at COP 19 during a side event, making it publicly available to all CITES parties and interested stakeholders. And this tracking and management system has since been made available in the 3 official languages, which the Secretariat hopes will make the system more useful to all CITES parties. Accordingly, Decision 17.108 Rev Cop 19 has now been fully implemented. The Secretariat has also made available an updated draft user-friendly guide for all public users of the RST tracking and management system in the 3 languages through notification to the parties number 2023/114 of 18th of September 2023. The notification invites parties to provide feedback on the tracking and management system and the draft user-friendly guide by the 31st of October, but this deadline has now been extended to the 30th of November. Accordingly, Decision 17.109 Rev Cop 19 has also been fully implemented. Finally, the Secretariat is planning to include a training module on the Review of Significant Trade on the CITES Virtual College and will provide an update on the implementation of Decision 17.110 Rev Cop 19 to SC 78. So the Standing Committee is invited to note document SC 77 Doc 35.1 Rev 1 and agree that Decision 17.108 Rev Cop 19 and 17.109 Rev Cop 19 have been implemented. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. And so I'm going to ask the committee if we can agree to note this document, or is there comments or something that I need to capture before we move forward? Because the recommendation is to note. if you, does anyone want the floor? Okay. So for SC 77 Doc 35.1, the Standing Committee agrees to note the document and the recommendations in paragraph 14 and agree that the decision 17.108 Rev Cop 19 and 17.109 Rev Cop 19 have been implemented. Thank you, committee. We're going to go to the next document, which is 35.2, implementation of the recommendations of the Animals Committee. And I give it to the Secretariat to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. In document SC 77, Doc 35.1, Rev 1, the Secretariat has submitted for consideration of the Standing Committee its determination of implementation of fauna cases that were due for reporting at the present meeting. I should note that the revised version of the document, Rev 1, was produced purely to reflect the changes that I just outlined in the previous document and to correct a problem with the numbering of the recommendations for the case of Amazona farinosa from Guyana. In the current document, the Secretariat reports on 19 cases that are divided into two sections. Section 1 contains 7 long-standing cases, 4 of which are currently subject to a recommendation to suspend trade, but where the range state has provided new information. And Section 2 contains 12 ongoing cases that were selected following COP17 and retained by the Animals Committee at its 30th meeting and the Standing Committee at its 74th or 75th meeting. New information has been received from the following parties: Cameroon, Indonesia, Equatorial Guinea, Grenada, Guyana, Morocco, Suriname, Togo, and Tunisia. And short summaries of the responses are included in the tables in Annex 1 to this document, while the detailed responses from Equatorial Guinea, Grenada, Indonesia, Suriname, and Tunisia are found in Annexes 2A to 2E in the language and format as received. Turning to Annex 1 of the document, the table in Section 1 provides an overview of the 7 long-standing fauna cases where new information has been provided by the party concerned, while the table in Section B provides an overview of the 12 fauna species country combinations that were selected at AC 29 and retained following AC 30. The recommendations in this document reflect the outcomes of the intersessional consultations with the Animals Committee in accordance with paragraph 1K of Resolution Conf 12.8 Rev Cop 18. And the recommendations for all of the cases are found in paragraph 30 and are arranged in the same order as the table in Section A of Annex 1 to this document, followed by Section B of the same annex. The Secretariat would like to highlight that the recommendation for Euromastix geri from Mali is actually a new recommendation to suspend trade. So it should be amended as follows, and I'm talking about recommendation O in paragraph 30. So the two words continue to should be struck out or deleted, so that the recommendation would read, concerning Euromastix geri from Mali, the Standing Committee is invited to recommend all parties suspend trade in specimens of Euromastix geri from Mali until it demonstrates compliance with Article 4, paragraphs 2A and 3 for trade in this species, and provides full information to the Secretariat regarding compliance with the recommendations of the Animals and Standing Committees. In addition to this change, the Secretariat notes that Morocco had submitted a response concerning trade in anguilla within the agreed time frame that only recently came to our attention. The response has been made available as information document number 24 in the original language and format received. Importantly, Morocco has provided detailed responses to the outstanding recommendations and confirmed that it will retain its harvest of glass eels at 2 tonnes and does not intend to increase this harvest to 4 tonnes. On the basis of this response from Morocco, the Secretariat would like to amend its recommendation to the Standing Committee to read as follows. So this is recommendation or in paragraph 30 of this document. So concerning anguilla from Morocco, the Standing Committee is invited to Roman numeral I, congratulate Morocco for the significant progress it has made in implementing the recommendations of the Animals Committee, and Roman numeral 2, agree to remove Anguilla from Morocco from the review. The information from Morocco was also made available to the members of the Animals Committee, and the chair of the Animals Committee may wish to provide the views of the committee on the Secretariat's proposed revised recommendation concerning Anguilla from Morocco. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I give the floor to Switzerland as the chair of the Animals Committee.
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned by the Secretariat, the Animals Committee has reviewed this new information and would also like to congratulate Morocco on its efforts and on its progress made, and has unanimously agreed to the proposed recommendation to remove Morocco and the European eel from the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee. And I will open the floor to comments from the Standing Committee. I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the North American region, we support recommendations A through S related to the 19 species countries combinations undergoing the review of significant trade reported in document SC 77, document 35.2, Rev 1, which reflects AC input and acknowledges the progress made by the range countries to address the recommendations. With regard to Section 1 of the document, we would like to seek clarification from the Secretariat regarding the case of Pandinus impetor for Togo, as the document does not include specific recommendations to the Standing Committee for this case. We would like to confirm that the Secretariat is not asking for an evaluation, but just providing an update on the current situation regarding the long-standing case. Regarding Section 2 of the document, we are very concerned with the lack of responses by some parties to the Secretariat's requests for updates on the implementation of the recommendations. To ensure the effectiveness of the review of significant trade, it is important for parties to be responsive in this process. Thus, we urge those parties to provide an update on the implementation of their outstanding recommendations prior to the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee. We would also encourage parties to inform the Secretariat if they are experiencing any limitations or hindrances in providing a response or addressing the recommendations. Thank you.
Can you just provide those are those recommendations already encapsulated in the recommendations in the document, or you're proposing 2 additional recommendations about for the parties who are named?
No, recommendations that are already inside.
Okay, thank you so much. I give the floor to Poland.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to thank the Secretariat for this document and in general agree with the way forward proposed by the Secretariat for the species country combinations in Part 1 and Part 2 of the summary of ongoing review of significant trade cases. However, in the case of Anguilla from Morocco, we should be more cautious, as the recovery of the European eel population is a common concern that requires an effective coordinated efforts across the entire range of the species, and any local harvesting will affect all range countries. As such, we are in favor of keeping the species country combination in the process, as suggested in the original proposal as seen in the document, and taking this into account and the information about the review of significant trade on Anguilla from Morocco, we'd like to seek clarity on the use of source codes W and R to gain better understanding of the conclusions, and wish to ask Morocco what proportion of the glass eel is used for conservation purposes. Furthermore, the EU considers that it would be beneficial that the report from Morocco should be reviewed and confirmed by the Animals Committee, taking into consideration the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea advice as appropriate. In that regard, the EU suggests adding to original recommendations in the document, paragraph 30R, a new point, Roman 4, with the following text. Invite the Animals Committee to assess the report provided and the sustainability of commercial trade of anguilla anguilla by Morocco in the light of the assessment and recommendation issued by ICES for eels populations of North Atlantic, and to form new recommendations as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. Many countries in the review process have made good progress in implementing the recommendations of Animals Committee since last reviewed by the Standing Committee, and we'd like to congratulate those parties, especially on some of the long-standing cases which look set to be removed from the process, although we echo the concerns of the North America region on the lack of responses on some of the cases. We agree with the recommendations made by the Secretariat, but have a number of brief comments. Firstly, we note with concern the lack of response by Mali with respect to recommendations relating to Euromastix gheriae, and furthermore note the continuing trade being reported from Mali by both exporting and importing countries, despite a zero export quota being recommended by the Animals Committee back in 2017 and published on the Secretariat's website, and support the Secretariat's recommendation to suspend trade until such times as they have addressed AC recommendations. On anguilla anguilla from Morocco, we thank Morocco for the additional information provided, which appears to include a lot of the relevant information required for a non-detriment finding. We would encourage Morocco to compile this information provided through the course of the review of significant trade process into a standalone NDF document to support any future exports, taking into account any guidance from the NDF workshop in December. We can support the Secretariat's updated recommendation to remove Morocco from the review process on the condition that A, the quota continues to be published on the Secretariat's website, and B, any increase to the quota should be first notified to the Secretariat and Chair of the Animals Committee, together with the scientific basis for that change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, the United Kingdom. I give the floor to the Animals Committee Chair to possibly respond to the comment from Poland. What I heard in the beginning is that you've already reviewed the information.
Yes, I can only repeat what I said. The Animals Committee has reviewed this new information and unanimously found that we support the recommendation of the Secretariat to remove Morocco from the process. So we have done this review, and we are of the view that the concerns raised in the Animals Committee have been dealt with by the response from Morocco. Thank you.
I give the floor to Morocco.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank the Secretariat for the document, and we'd also like to thank the Animals Committee for having taken the time to examine the document SC 77-24, which looks at the implementation of the recommendations of the Animals Committee for RST of anguilla anguilla from Morocco. Morocco has responded to all the concerns of the Animals Committee in short, medium and long term, and we would repeat once more the maintenance of the annual quota, which was decided on in consultation with the Secretariat and the Chair of the Animals Committee. These are published annually on the CITES website and do not go beyond 2 tons for the glass eels and the quantities for eels from farming. The consideration of the annual report shows that there were no wild eels exported, and since 2019, none were taken for the wild. All the quantities exported come from aquaculture under the R source code which is also established in accordance and with the agreement of the Secretariat. We'd also like to inform the Standing Committee that a policy for repopulation is in place in Morocco since 2006, and that 10% of production is reserved for being put in rivers, and this is all in the documents that were sent by Morocco. So we would request that the committee withdraw Anguilla from Morocco from the process. Thank you.
I open the floor now to observer parties. Open the floor to observer organizations. I give the floor to the Secretariat to respond to the question regarding Togo, I believe, from the representative from the United States.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So just to come in and clarify the situation with Togo and Pandinus imperata, as I indicated, all of the cases in that section where a party has produced some new information where the case could actually be reconsidered. In the case of Togo, they just provided information that they were going to undertake these studies as part of the CAP. So I thought it was important. We thought it was important for the parties and the committee to know that Togo is moving forward on this. That species country combination is currently subject to a suspension. If there is new information, so the studies will produce the information that Togo needs to undertake an NDF. We will present that information at the first convenient time for the Animals Committee and then the Standing Committee to consider whether the suspension could be lifted or not. But it's really up to Togo as to when they finish that study and produce the necessary documentation and address the recommendations. So I hope that clarifies the point. Great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Secretariat. And so I'm seeing support for the recommendations in the document as amended by the Secretariat, with the exception of recommendation R regarding Anguilla from Morocco. And we had a couple of comments. One was from the United Kingdom, who agrees with the removal under conditions that the quota is published on the CITES website, and that any change to the quota is provided to the Secretariat and the Animals Committee along with the scientific basis for the change in the quota. And just back to the committee, Poland, was there an additional condition that you were providing regarding the removal or retention of Morocco in the process? I give the floor to Poland.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to seek clarity on the issue of Animals Committee analysis. Was it taken into account the recent ICES report too, or was it only the report by Morocco? Thank you.
I think we can note that for the. I give the floor to the chair of the Animals Committee.
Thank you, Paul. No, we have not considered that recent analysis. We have based our decision on our requests that we made to Morocco and on the report that was given. And compared these two documents, and we saw that the recommendations that the Animals Committee has imposed on Morocco have been clarified and solved by Morocco.
Thank you, Chair of the Animals Committee. So I would like to see what the committee's thoughts are on the two conditions on the removal of Morocco from the process. Morocco has stated that they do provide a quota to the CITES Secretariat, and so I think the only other addition would be if they provide a revised quota, that they accompany it with the scientific basis for the change in the quota. Morocco is shaking her head like that is something that they are agreeing to do. And what's that? That seems to be a good way forward, and the committee can agree to that. I think we can add just another recommendation that we invite Morocco to take into consideration the ICES for eels population of the North Atlantic into their decision-making when they set their quotas. I'm not seeing any support for that additional recommendation. Okay, so I'm going to summarize this recommendation R, and it is agreeing to remove Anguilla from Morocco from the review. Oh wait, no, start at the bottom. R, concerning Anguilla from Morocco, the Standing Committee, I, congratulates Morocco on the significant progress it has made in implementing the recommendations of the Animals Committee. And I agrees to remove Anguilla from Morocco from the review under the condition that Morocco provides a quota to the site, their quota to the CITES Secretariat, and provides scientific basis for any revised quota. All right, I'm going to try to say that one better, okay?
Sorry.
Okay, one more time. So for recommendation II, the Standing Committee agrees to remove Anguilla from Morocco from the review with the condition and requests that Morocco provide their quota to the CITES Secretariat, and before making any increases in the interim quota, including increases from a zero export quota, the plan change should be communicated to the CITES Secretariat along with scientific basis for the changes. I'm going to give the floor to the Secretariat to read out the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's quite a long piece of text, but this is sort of the standard text that we use. So it would be after point 2, it would be a new point 3, which would read, before making any increases to the quota, The plan changes should be communicated to the Secretariat and Chair of the Animals Committee, along with the justification of how the change is conservative based on estimates of sustainable offtake that make use of best available scientific information for their agreement. That's sort of the standard text that we use to explain where a quota needs to be informed if there's going to be a proposed increase. And I think that's acceptable, yeah. I hope you caught that.
Thank you, Secretariat. Poland, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'd like to support your recommendation, your additional recommendation to take into account IC's advice when setting the quotas, as suggested by you, Chair. So we would like to see it also in the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Poland. Is there anyone else support for including the recommendations for Morocco to consider the ICES for eels population in the North Atlantic as part of their decision making in setting their quotas? Okay, there's some support for that. Is everyone clear what the recommendations are, or would you like me to go over them again? Does the committee agree to those recommendations, including the recommendation regarding inviting Morocco to consider the ICES for eels population of North Atlantic as they make their decisions on their eels quota? Okay. Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not really sure if that's correct, because if that is being taken in account, then there will be no quota, because the ICES says no offtake. So if Morocco is tasked to take this into account, they can't have a quota.
The United Kingdom?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if a way forward is just to take out that last recommendation. That's already covered by the recommendation in B because it's relevant information, so it'll already be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. Morocco?
Oui, je suis tout à fait. Yes, I completely agree with the recommendation from the United Kingdom because the quotas are set with the Secretariat and with the Animals Committee, and we will fully respect the quotas. They are sustainable and take into account all the needs of the species. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any support for that last recommendation, so we're going to be taking that out. With that, I will note all of the comments that were made on the floor, and we will close this agenda item, and I will move on to agenda item 33.5, implementation of recommendations of the Plans Committee. Sorry, 35.3.
Thank you, Chair. In document 35.3, the Secretariat reports on actions taken by the parties to implement recommendations made by the Plants and Standing Committees under the RST process, as outlined in Section 1 of the document. Earlier this week, under agenda item 33.2, the committee agreed on recommendations with regards to the exceptional selection of the 8 Pterocarpus erinaceus country selection under the framework of the expedited Article 13 process. Therefore, the present document Doc 35.3 reports on the remaining set of 7 RST flora cases that are due for reporting at the press meeting and which are listed in paragraph 5 of the document. The Standing Committee is invited to decide on necessary action for the 7 cases concerned, as outlined in the recommendations under paragraph 19 of the document. And we invite the committee to note that these recommendations incorporate the outcomes of the timely consultations with the Plans Committee that took place both at PC26 as well as intersessionally. Additionally, Madam Chair, the Secretariat includes in paragraph 20 a recommendation for the Standing Committee to take note of the report of the species-specific matters identified by the Plans Committee, which are not related to the implementation of Article 4 of the Convention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I give the floor to members of the Standing Committee for comments. The United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the North American region, we support the recommendations in this document which reflect PC input into the ongoing cases and acknowledge range country the progress on ongoing cases presented in the document. Regarding Section 2 of the document, while we are not opposed to noting the Secretary's report in paragraphs 16 and 17, we are concerned by the lack of responses by one of the parties involved in the trade. And furthermore, think additional discussion is still required on the origin of parental stock. Additionally, we are unclear on the Secretariat's suggestion that the lack of an import permit for Appendix 2 species means that details cannot be provided on the origin of parental stock. In addition to expectations to maintain records and reports on trade, guidance is also provided in resolutions to support robust legal acquisition findings and non-detriment findings. Therefore, we suggest that the Standing Committee invite CITES Secretariat to further engage with the parties concerned and request additional information on the origin of the parental stock and the use of source codes, and present specific recommendations to the committee in its next meeting on how to address any potential issues. Thank you.
Thank you, the United States. Any other comments from members of the Standing Committee? Open the floor to observer parties. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to Section 1 of the document, we would like to have the following comments to the species country combinations. For Dalbergia retusa from Nicaragua, we are of the opinion that this combination shouldn't be removed from the process. We would like to highlight the lack of natural regeneration and other additional information is required, including management plans for forest concessions where the species is harvested. We also would request some clarification on whether Nicaragua intended to submit a quota. For Pericopsis elata from Congo, we are also of the opinion that this combination shouldn't be removed on the basis that many recommendations of the Plants Committee still remain to be not fully implemented. We suggest this species be retained in the process. For Pericopsis elata from Democratic Republic of the Congo, we also think that this combination shouldn't be removed. We note an export quota for Pericopsis elata was published for 2023, and recommendations A to E and J to K of the Plants Committee and F to I of the Standing Committee are considered to have been met. However, we still have some concerns which would negate the removal of this combination from the process. We agree that the DRC has complied with the recommendations in the framework of the process for the species, and that the case. Yes, I will finish here. And for Prunus africana from Cameroon.
Can you give the floor back to Poland? Thank you. Please give the floor back to Poland.
Yeah. Yes, the same for Prunus africana from Cameroon. We think that this is premature to remove this combination from the process. For Pterocarpus santalinus from India, we are okay with removal of this combination from the process if India can confirm the publication of voluntary zero export quotas for wild specimens of the species for the period 2023-2026, and request the publication of the remaining unused credit of the one-time export for confiscated specimens of Pterocarpus santalinus. With regard to Section 2, we agree with the Secretariat assessment of these three cases that no further action is needed at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Poland. I give the floor to India.
Thank you, Chair. India welcomes the recommendation to remove Pterocarpus santalinus from the RST process. However, we could not understand the rationale behind the two recommendations, 2I and 3I, in paragraph 19G of the document SC 77.35.3. India has strong laws for forest and wildlife protection, and India applies stricter domestic measures than CITES for Pterocarpus santalinus. The felling and transport of the species is strictly regulated by the state and national laws. The majority of seized Pterocarpus santalinus specimens have been seized for violations of state and national laws, and not for the export or import violations related to CITES. In 2012, Indian Scientific Authority carried out an NDF for Pterocarpus santalinus, and a zero quota for export of the species from the wild was established. At SC 62, in response to questions about the possibility of continued export of specimens of Pterocarpus santalinus from India from confiscated, seized, or artificially propagated sources, the Secretariat explained that these were governed by the erstwhile Resolution Conf 9.10 Rev Cop 15 on disposal of confiscated and accumulated specimens, and Article 7, Paragraph 5 of the Convention, and not Article 4, Paragraph 2A, 3, and 6A, which were subject to the review of significant trade. However, the species was selected again by the Plants Committee for the RST process at PC 21 in May 2021, which had apparently ignored the steps taken by India to fulfill the RST recommendations. Subsequent to this, Indian Scientific Authority conducted an NDF study for Pterocarpus santalinus in 2019 and 2020. The making of non-detrimental findings, legal acquisition findings, and findings regarding artificial propagation are functions vested in the management and scientific authorities of parties by the Convention. The present recommendation is conditional, which India feels is not appropriate. Moreover, in the past, the SC 75 had recommended removal of Nardostachys jatamansi from RST process for Nepal without any conditions. The recommendations by Secretariat in this document for removal of country species combinations from RST for Pericopsis elata and Prunus africanus from Democratic Republic of Congo and Prunus africana from Cameroon all are without any conditions. Madam Chair, India has been regularly reporting the export of both seized as well as artificially propagated Pterocarpus santalinus to the Secretariat, and will continue to do through the CITES annual reports, which are up to date.
Thank you, India.
Just one It may be noted that in accordance with the NDF advice of its scientific authority, India has not permitted the harvest and export of Pterocarpus sentalinus specimens from the wild. We therefore urge the Standing Committee not to make recommendation 2I and 3I as suggested in paragraph 19G of document SC 77, doc 35.3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. I give the floor to the DRC for a quick intervention, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. We followed Poland's interest with some interest. They said that they didn't want Pericopsis hilata withdrawn from significant trade. I'm not sure what is really being suggested. All of the recommendations made to us were put into place, and the scientific body has given us the go-ahead. Poland has been suggested it not be withdrawn without asking us anything. We're not suggesting, we're wondering why this suggestion is being made, because we've met all of the conditions, so we don't understand the Polish position. Thank you.
Thank you, DRC. I give the floor to Singapore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Singapore would like to make a comment in response to paragraph 17 of the present document. Singapore expressed our concerns on the erroneous recording of Singapore as a range state that exports Equilaria melanensis. And as a result, Singapore is incorrectly identified as a species country combination for Equilaria melanensis for stage 2 process of the RST. Singapore, being an island city-state, does not have a forestry sector. Singapore does not export our native Equilaria melanensis. All trade of Equilaria melanensis are imported and subsequently re-exported. This is reflected in the CITES trade database when Singapore submits her yearly data. This was, however, not accurately reflected in Annex 1 of PC 26.16.5. We note that documents 35.3, CITES Secretariat and UNEP WCMC are working to address this issue. Singapore looks forward to a more transparent, accurate, and robust trade data analysis to support justification, including parties to the RST process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Singapore. We will take note of that. I give the floor to Cameroon.
Merci, Madame la. Thank you, Madam Chair. Cameroon would like to say how much it welcomes the work that has been done in preparation for 35.2, including the work on Prunus africana. We have made great efforts with respect to this species, particularly with respect to making NDFs and setting a precautionary export quota with a drop of almost 20%. We would tend to agree with the DRC. We don't quite understand the reason for the suggestion made by Poland. It seems to be wanting a decision made despite the fact that there are established facts with respect to this species. Thank you.
Thank you, the DRC. I'll take one observer organization. I don't have any. And so I would just like to say that it's important that the Standing Committee respects the processes of the Plants and Animals Committee in their review and their recommendations. And to sum up what I have heard, and I'm going to go through I'm just going to try to go through these recommendation by recommendation. We have there is the recommendation A, which there is support for recommendation A as written in the document. I didn't hear any comments about the removal. So the committee agrees to recommendation A. Recommendation B. I did not hear any comments regarding recommendation B. If there are any comments about recommendation B, now is the time. The committee agrees to recommendation B. Recommendation C, I did not hear any comments regarding recommendation C. Are there any comments regarding recommendation C? The committee agrees to recommendation C. We had some comments regarding recommendation D for Perikopsis alata from the DRC. There was a comment from the gentleman from Poland to retain it in the RST process. There was also a comment from the DRC about them going through the process through the Plants Committee and coming out and to be removed. And I'm looking to the committee to see if there's any support for the Poland comment to retain Perikopsis alata in the RST process from the DRC. I do not see any support for that. So the committee is going to agree to recommendation D as outlined in the document. For recommendation E, for Prunus africana from Cameroon, there was a comment from the representative for Poland to retain Prunus africana Cameroon in the RST process. Is there support for the Poland recommendation to remain to retain Prunus africana Cameroon? There is some support for that. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that we are agreeable to release the combination from the process when the 20% reduction of the quota is published on the Secretariat website. Thank you, Chair.
This is for Prunus africana from Cameroon. Is that acceptable to the committee? Cameroon, I'd like to hear your reaction to that. Can you respond to the recommendation for Poland to be removed from the process with a 20% reduction in your quota and a publication on the website?
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That quota reduction has already been published on the web page. And we did actually follow all of the recommendations made with respect to this species. So we are already in keeping with the recommendations made. Thank you, Madam.
This quota has already been published at the request of Cameroon on the CITES website. So can we agree to remove Prunus africana Cameroon and recommendation E, now that there's been confirmation that the quota is published on the website? There is some support for agreeing to recommendation E. Poland, you have the floor.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, and sorry for taking the floor again. We just want to clarify if the quota is published for 2023 for the current year, because we checked and we didn't see it. I'm just trying to confirm it. Thank you.
How about we park recommendation E while the Secretariat looks that up? Recommendation F, I didn't hear any. I heard some agreement for recommendation F as in the document. The committee agrees to recommendation F. Recommendation G. Again. We had a proposal from India to remove little I, little I, little I, little I, little I, from the recommendation? Is there support to remove Roman numerals 2 and 3 from the recommendation? I'm not seeing support from the committee for that. Kuwait, you have the floor.
We would like to support the request made by India. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuwait. I have some support for that removal of II and III. I'm going to take silence as consensus, like that we're moving forward with removing those with the support from the representative from Kuwait, and no other comments from the committee. Okay, so the committee agrees to recommendation G without the 2 Roman numerals I, and II3. So it will say that it agrees that India has complied with the recommendations for Pterocarpus santalinus and can be removed from the RST process. Okay, so the only other recommendation that we're working on regarding the publication of the quote, I'm going to give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Just to mention that we did receive in time and well ahead of the meeting the request from Cameroon for the publication of the quota as mentioned earlier. For some reason, we published it, but we can't see it appearing in the website, so we will make sure to fix that potential glitch. But we confirm that we've received this request, and we take it that is the request and from Cameroon to have this published.
Is the committee comfortable with agreeing to recommendation E with the new information of the glitch from the Secretariat? Okay, I am not seeing any disagreement with that, and so the committee agrees to recommendation E. The committee also agrees to note the Secretariat's report as contained in paragraph 16 and 17 of the present document, recommendation 20. And with that, I close this agenda item and we move on to the next. I note the comments that were made on the floor and close the agenda item and move on to the next one, which is which is 69 products containing specimens of Appendix 2 orchids. And I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting this document that has been jointly submitted by the Secretariat and the Chair of the Plants Committee. At its 26th meeting, the Plants Committee discussed a document in the framework of Decision 19246. And this document contained the review of edible orchid trade commissioned by the Secretariat to the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew. The Plants Committee considered a review on trade in edible orchids, specifically in tuberous orchids for Saleb and Giganda products, and made a number of recommendations to the Standing Committee, which you find in paragraph 11 of document SC 77, document 769. Those recommendations reflect the Plants Committee's view that this trade, international trade needs attention, that it has a range of issues that are not clear, that need to be clarified, and they aim to raise awareness among parties, to collect additional information, and to urge parties to regulate this trade in tuberous orchids as is currently required under the convention, but apparently not reflected in our trade database. And with this, I stop this very short introduction, given the time, and hand back to the chair. Thanks.
Thank you. I now give the floor to standing committee members for comments. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom agrees with the recommendations. We are pleased to show progress towards Recommendation B and recently provided funding to contribute to the red listing of tuberous orchid species traded in southern Africa. We look forward to sharing an update on this work at the next Plants Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I give the floor to Poland.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to thank the Plans Committee for the evaluation of the study and agree with its overall idea and idea of the recommendations. The work to date has highlighted Appendix 2 orchid species which are being traded across international borders without scrutiny. There is a clear need to support enforcement in identification and training. We also need to know the conservation status of many of the species highlighted in reports. At the same time, we have unnecessary bureaucracy in trade of artificially propagated species, many of which are of no conservation concern. We would like to make two comments to the recommendations. For recommendation C, dealing with enforcement, we think that this recommendation can give impression that this is specific to the species, but trade should be always regulated as required under the convention. We suggest a more specific wording based on the study. We suggest changing words regulate the trade with improve CITES enforcement for trade, so that the recommendation would read urge parties to improve CITES enforcement for trade in tuberous orchids as is currently required under the convention. For recommendation E on timeline, according to the recommendation, the study mentioned in decision 19.246A should not be considered by the Standing Committee when making recommendations to COP20. Especially given that the conclusions by the Plants Committee regarding this study are very broad, the Standing Committee should consider at its 78th meeting both studies, the information from the notification and all available recommendations of the Plants Committee to formulate its recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Can you just repeat that, the last recommendation again? It's different than what's in E regarding the timing?
Yes, we would like to have it mentioned not only the study mentioned in decision 19.246B, but also 19.246A.
Thank
you, Chair.
I open the floor to observer parties. I give the floor to Switzerland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have just a clarification concerning the mentioned notifications in the recommendations of paragraph 11 in the document 69. The notification mentioned under paragraph 11D is not the same as the one mentioned in paragraph 11E. So therefore, we propose to add to paragraph 11E concerning the notification the following. And including any responses to the notification under decision 19.268, because this decision refers to orchid specimens exempt through annotation hash 4G.
Thank
you, Madam Chair.
Opening the floor to any observer organizations. Any other? Tanzania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing the United Party of Tanzania to contribute on agenda item SC 77 Doc 799 prepared by the Secretariat. the United Republic of Tanzania is a range state of orchids, and the studies show that there are 60 orchid genera and 17 species, of which 2 of them are rare species. So we agree with the recommendations put forward by the Secretariat, except that we recommend recommendation B, that urges parties and other donors to support red list assessment for tuberous orchids taxa international trade, as there is no sufficient scientific information on the status of the species is available in certain range states, including the United States of Tanzania. Therefore, I think that we have little information to adopt these recommendations. I mean recommendation B. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tanzania. Any additional comments on this document? Okay, we had a number of proposals and edits on this document. We had one from Poland, Switzerland, and one other member, and so I'm going to read out a revised recommendation and let me know how you guys feel about it. So it would be recommendation in paragraph 11, A, as listed in the document, B, as listed in the document, C would be to urge parties to improve CITES enforcement for trade in tuberous orchids as is currently required under the convention. Recommendation D, as listed in the document. Recommendation E with a couple of inclusions, which would be consider the study called for in paragraph B of decision 19.246 if available, and the Plants Committee's recommendation on the study and including any responses to the notification under decision 19.268 at its 78th meeting and proposed recommendations to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, including any draft decisions as appropriate, and to a new recommendation F, request the Secretariat to present all relevant information from studies and notifications under decision 19.246 to the Standing Committee at its next meeting. And I believe that addressed all the comments and edits that we've heard. Is there agreement with those? Chair of the Animals Committee.
I'm speaking on behalf of Switzerland this time. I'm not an English native speaker, but I don't quite understand the rationale between improve the enforcement of trade. Shouldn't it be improve the regulation of trade? I don't quite understand what improve the enforcement mean. Improve the enforcement of the trade. I just don't quite understand what that should mean, what we should do then. Yeah.
Would Poland, this was your edit, would maybe support step up? I give the floor to Poland.
Yes, thank you. Just to explain, we think that regulation the trade is like a very, very basic formulation. It's that the regulation of trade is should be done anyway, as they are included in appendices of the convention. So that's why we want to have it more captured what we want. We thought that improved CITES enforcement would be better formulation, but we are open for other suggestions too. Thank you, Chair.
What about improved regulation and enforcement relating to trade? Does that serve the same intent of your? Okay, so we will just revise recommendation C to urge parties to improve regulation and enforcement relating to trade in tuberous orchids as currently required under the convention. Okay, there seems to be agreement for that. And so I note all of the comments made on the floor. And with that, I close this agenda item. And we move on to the next one, which is 61 phytosanitary certificates that are regarded as phytosanitary certificates that are regarded as artificial propagation certificates. And I give the floor to Korea to introduce the document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea will provide a brief explanation regarding this agenda item. Paragraph 15 of Resolution Conf 12.3, Conf Lab Com 19 allows parties to consider phytosanitary certificates as artificial propagation certificates. The Republic of Korea, being a party that implemented this measure, has received various inquiries from Korean exporters and other parties during practical implementation. And further good practice from other parties were also needed to effectively address these inquiries. In response, we surveyed the relevant parties by email based on the information on CITES website in 2020. And the findings are present in Annex 1 of this document. I wish to take this opportunity to express our sincere gratitude to the parties for providing their valuable information. Our survey shows that the regulations among the parties differ not only from each other, but also from the information provided on the CITES website. These discrepancies in information could potentially pose challenges in the implementation of the convention. We have submitted this document to the committee as a way to address this issue we recognized. However, for more specific implementation, we would like to amend the subparagraph C of paragraph 9 of our recommendations as follows. The text would be read, C, request the Secretariat to issue notification to parties inviting them to submit relevant information and update it on the CITES website for implementing a subparagraph B above. The Republic of Korea requests the Standing Committee to consider adopting the recommendation outlined in paragraph 9 of this document with the wording we just modified. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Korea. I open the floor to standing committee members. Give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is on behalf of the North American region. While the North American region does not implement this provision, we do not have concerns about other parties implementing it in accordance with the provision of paragraph 5 of Article 7 and Section 8 of Resolution Conf 12.3 as a means of streamlining procedure. However, we strongly support the need to maintain accurate information on the CITES website and suggest that parties should provide updated information to the Secretariat, particularly if they are no longer implementing the special provisions for the use of phytosanitary certificates for export of certain artificially propagated plants as outlined in Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev Conf COP 19. However, we considered that it would be premature to post additional details to the CITES webpage or take further action before the issue has been considered. We also note that this topic has a nexus to the Plants Committee. While we are supportive of additional efforts to gain a better understanding of the taxa and processes parties use to implement this special procedure, as this could assist implementation and enforcement, we suggest deferring discussion of the broader issue as the parties are implementing the provision to the next intersessional. We offer the following amendments to the recommendations. These were also given to the Secretariat of SC 77 Document 61 as follows for consideration by the Standing Committee. Revise or replace the current recommendation as follows. For A, there's no change. For B, as found in Document 61, with the following recommendation to be in two parts aimed at the parties. So B would then be little b, little I, strike, encourage parties in particular, insert, invite, continue parties, and then insert no longer, and then it continues implementing special procedures to strike, consider, and then it continues issue phytosanitary certificates, strike as, add in lieu of CITES, continue certificate of artificial propagation, strike in accordance with paragraph 5 of Article 7, continue to strike, provide, add, notify the Secretariat, and then strike with information relating to this document of such, of this document, and then add of such, colon, semicolon, and. Continue. Okay. And part 2 of the revised recommendation would be a new sentence to read as follows. This is little b, little ii, so the part 2. And the new paragraph would be, parties implementing this provision are reminded of the recommendations set forth in Resolution Conf 12.3 on permits and certificates. Paragraph 15A, that, quote, such...
North American region, can you just start with this new recommendation from the beginning and just a little slower, please?
Okay, sorry. So this is little b, little b, little ii, right? Parties implementing this provision are reminded of the recommendations set forth in Resolution Conf 12.3 on permits and certificates, comma, paragraph 15A, that, colon, in quotations, such certificates must include the scientific names of the species and the type and quantity of the specimen and bear a stamp, comma, seal, or their electronic equivalent, comma, or other specific indication stating that the specimens are artificially propagated as defined by CITES, semicolon, end quotation.
Thank you, North American region.
So there's still a little bit more.
Oh, there's a little,
sorry.
There's a little bit more. Back to North American region.
C, the text states, request the Secretariat to update the adding in CITES website based on the information provided in accordance with paragraph BI above, add including the, continue with the, and then add CITES, exemptions and special procedures website, as well as this information in the country profile, semicolon, and then the last one is the last bullet, D, which is completely new. And so we're replacing what's there with the following. In coordination with the Plants Committee, comma, submit a draft decision to the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties to further explore the applicable taxa and how parties apply the special procedures in accordance with Article 5 or paragraph 5 of Article 7 and outlined in Resolution Conf 12.3 Rev Cop 19, comma, Section 8, comma, for consideration during the next intercessional period. Thank you.
Thank you, North American region. I give the floor to Belgium.
Shit. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. We thank the Republic of Korea for the documents, and we regard the possibility to consider phytosanitary certificates as certificates of artificial propagation in accordance with Article 7, Paragraph 5 as an important and valuable provision for the implementation. We do want to ask some clarification from the Republic of Korea and as to what they understand by the convention-level measures that are needed to tackle their concerns, as mentioned in the document in Para 7. We do recognize that the CITES website exemption and special procedures can be complemented with the information to provide a better overview on the way parties have implemented the procedure. We do need some more time to reflect on the revisions by the USA, and we would like to ask the Republic of Korea if they have a view on those revisions and to see what they think, especially in light with the Recommendation 9, Paragraph D. Thank you.
Thank you, Belgium. I will give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We were thinking similarly to the EU, whether, I'm conscious that we're approaching the end of Standing Committee, but whether a common doc might be a good way forward to have a chance to look at those and then come back tomorrow, perhaps, if that's amenable. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, the UK. I open the floor to observer parties. And I'd like to give the floor to Korea to see how they feel about those edits.
Thank you for Belgium's response. we have concerns this special procedure has many misunderstanding over Korean exporters. So I think we need to consider this misunderstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Korea. Open the floor to observer parties. So I don't see any other comments. It's a bit late to get a ComDoc going because it would have to be translated in the 3 languages. And so is there support for the recommendations in the document? Or is there great interest in the edits made by the North American region? We could read them out in their entirety if that would be helpful. We have a written version here. Or we can agree on the recommendations as submitted by Korea. We can ask the Secretary to issue a notification to the parties for them to be able to update whether or not they implement these special provisions for artificially propagated specimens as outlined in 12.3, so we can have an updated list on the website. Is that, I give the floor to Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a reflection on the propositions of the US, and we see what they try to capture, and I think we can agree with those. So the B, little Roman I, second I, C, and D even. Thank you.
Would that be all of the edits that were proposed, Belgium? Okay. So there is support on the floor. I will read them out in their entirety, and we can come to an agreement. I'm just going to read the text. I'm not going to read any of the strikeouts if that's fine. So it would be recommendation A is the same. Recommendation B would be invite parties no longer implementing special procedures to issue phytosanitary certificates in lieu of CITES certificates of artificial propagation to notify the Secretariat of such. Support for that recommendation? Yes. Okay, so the committee has agreed to adopt recommendation A and recommendation B as amended by the United States. And there's a second part to this recommendation, so there'll be a little I. Parties implementing such provisions are reminded of the recommendations set forth in Resolution 12.3 on permits and certificates, paragraph 15A, that such certificates must include the scientific name of the species and the type and quantity of the specimens and bear a stamp, seal, or their electronic equivalent, or other indications stating that the specimens are artificially propagated as defined by CITES. Support. I see support for that, so the committee can agree to the revised recommendation B. We have, for recommendation C, it will read, request the Secretariat to update the CITES website based on the information provided in accordance with paragraph B, little I, including the CITES exemption and special procedures webpage, as well as this information in the country profile. Support for the revised recommendation C? Okay, and so the last recommendation is D, in accordance with the Plants Committee, submit a draft decision to the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties to further explore the applicable taxa and how parties apply the special procedures in accordance with paragraph 5 of Article 7 as outlined in Resolution 12.3, Rep. Cop 19, Section 8, for consideration during the next intersessional period. And just to the North American representative, that last recommendation D, who is doing this in accordance, in coordination with the Plants Committee? Is this the Secretariat? Is this the Standing Committee? Are we looking? I give the floor to the United States.
Standing Committee Chair with the Plants Committee Chair.
So the recommendations for the Standing Committee Chair in coordination with the Plants Committee Chair to submit a draft decision to the next Conference of the Parties to further explore the applicable taxa and how parties apply the special procedures in accordance with paragraph 5 of Article 7 as outlined in Resolution 12.3, Rev. Cop 19, Section 8, for consideration during the next intersessional period. Is there support for that one? I do see support. So the committee would also agree to that new recommendation D. I will note all the comments made on the floor, and with that, we close this agenda item and move on to the next item. Okay. Thank you to the interpreters for 5 more minutes. We're going to do one last item, number 70, annotations. And I give the floor to the United Kingdom to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to the mandate agreed at SC 76, following PC 26 and AC 32, the committees invited the working group to prioritise completion of tasks under paragraph A and C of its mandate, with a focus on annotation 14, and consider paragraphs G and H of annotation A10 for Loxodonta africana as part of its mandate. The working group has confirmed its mandate and identified annotations where implementation would benefit from clarification or amendment. These are annotation 14, especially the term exhausted agarwood powder, annotations 11 and 12 with clarification and guidance on when an extract becomes an ingredient, and review annotation 4 for implementation challenges. Additional actions the working group identified include a review of the timber annotations to determine if they could be simplified, a clarification of annotation 3, interpretation, and interpretation of the term finished products packaged and ready for retail trade, and identifying definitions in the current annotations which require interpretation and guidance. We look forward to sharing our recommendations for consideration at SC 78. The committee is invited to take note of this interim report and to offer comments or guidance to the working group regarding the tasks included in the terms of reference contained in paragraphs 3 and 4 of SC 77 Doc 70. Thank you.
Thank you, the UK. In the effort of time, I would see if the Standing Committee is supportive of directing any comments regarding this directly to the United Kingdom as the chair of the working group. Is that okay? Do you agree with that? Okay, and the committee agrees to note the document? Thank you. We're going to move, with that I conclude this agenda item, and we're going to move on to 73, informal review of mechanisms for existing and proposed annotations, and I give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, we'll move for a quick presentation of these documents. Since the last report made at PC 26 and AC 32, the Secretariat has selected and is in the process of recruiting a consultant to undertake the required study in accordance with Decision 19.266, taking into account the proposal developed and the comments made on this thematic during SC 74. The study will be launched as soon as the consultant is recruited, and the Secretariat will report back at SC 78. The Standing Committee is invited to take note of this report from the Secretariat in the implementation of decisions 19.266 and 19.267. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. Any comments from members of the Standing Committee? United States.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking on behalf of the North America region, I'd like to note that we support noting the Secretariat's progress in the implementation of decisions 19.266 and 19.267. The region has expressed concerns regarding several aspects of adopting a formal mechanism, including its architecture as well as its role, and we will continue to monitor those issues as this work proceeds. During their last meetings, the CITES Secretariat invited the scientific committees to establish focal points for consultation with the Standing Committee on the proposal of the viability study for the mechanism in paragraph 6 of document PC 26, document 39, AC 32, document 44. It seems it was missed because it was included in the recommendations of this document. The North America region considers important that the Animals and Plants Committees are involved in this process, so we suggest the Standing Committee request the CITES Secretariat to consult with the scientific committees to identify the focal points. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I open the floor to observer parties, observer organizations. Okay, back to the Standing Committee. How do you guys, what are your thoughts on the new recommendation from the United States to request the Secretariat to consult with the technical committees on to identify leads, focal points to help inform this work? The committee agrees to take note of the document as well as the new recommendation provided from the United States. All right, they're not going to let us do any more agenda items for today. Thank you guys for hanging in there. I propose that we start tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We were able to get interpretation from 8 to 9 in efforts to complete the agenda for tomorrow. Again, just ask for folks relaxed rest this evening, but tomorrow to keep, interventions short, focus on the recommendations, and I think we can make it together with your support. We can get to the end. All right, thank you for your work today, folks.